Welcome into Out of Order, everyone. My name is Ben Mayer.
My name is Anthony Buono.
We're going to be talking about elections that happened in South Africa this past week. These elections were a big deal.
Yes.
This is actually a huge change. The ANC, the African party that ended apartheid, the party that Nelson Mandela started, they have lost their majority. So they've ruled South Africa basically for over 30 years as the majority party. And for the first time, they're going to have to pick new coalition party or partners.
Yes. I want to emphasize this. They weren't just the largest party in a parliament that led a coalition of other parties. They held the outright majority for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
And now for the first time, they no longer have that outright majority. There has been one consistent Democratic opposition. They call themselves the Democratic Alliance Party.
Yep.
Right? The Democratic Alliance has been their long-term opposition. But even the Democratic Alliance, they don't have enough party members and coalition and alliance parties to make a government. It's going to come down to the ANC choosing who they're going to govern with.
Exactly. And that's the really interesting thing. We don't know yet. They're still having these internal discussions. We're going to talk about potential options for them. But first, I want to talk about why the ANC lost power. They've been riding the coattails of ending apartheid for a very long time. And in my opinion, you can only ride the coattails of what you've done for so long.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of Democrats riding or Republicans riding the coattails of Abraham Lincoln.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Right?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
And then even as FDR started to bring the Democrats more towards the party that was friendlier to the black coalition, they were still voting for Republicans because it was the party of Lincoln.
Yep.
But the thing is, South Africa, they have just not made the country the place that they need to make it.
This is not the country Nelson Mandela had envisioned.
No, not at all. Their crime is terrible. They're top 10 in the world in crime. Their murder rate is something like 75 people per day. And this has been fueled by immense corruption, inequality, which is, I think, maybe the highest in the world, and poverty, of course. I think about 30 to 40% of their people live in poverty. And it kind of creates this cycle where crime is so bad that people aren't really interested in starting business or doing business, right? All they're saying is like anything I can create will just get wiped out by crime.
There's no reason to work for your own private property because it's all going to get taken from you anyway. That's at least their mindset.
Yes. I mean, it probably is true that the most productive thing you could do is become a criminal yourself. Yes.
And so like the youth unemployment rate in this country is around 50. It's between 30 and 50%. I know it's one of those numbers.
Yes.
It's crazy high.
It is.
Point is, it's not sustainable. They're not making a new generation of leaders here.
Yeah.
It's not happening. They're not creating a stable country that's going to be able to go 30, 40 more years like this. So there's a lot of call for change.
Totally.
Now, I'm not an expert on South African politics, but what I do know is people on the left in South Africa obviously think the ANC hasn't gone far enough. They haven't nationalized the coal companies. They haven't done repatriation of white landowners following the end of apartheid.
Yep.
And there are calls on the left to do those things. On the right, however, there are, honestly, the Democratic Alliance wants to liberalize the country more, bring in more foreign investment, make it a safer place for capital, which means cracking down on crime as much as possible.
Yeah.
And so this election kind of saw the tilt towards the extremes a little bit.
Yes.
Right? It didn't, the ANC, you can think of the center left. You kind of saw more switchings towards the far left and the far right, but more so the far right than the far left in this case, I think.
But I wouldn't even say far right.
Far right is also hard to say.
Because the ANC, I would say, is smack dab in the center. And I think I have a Nelson Mandela quote about the ANC that perfectly describes this, right? The ANC has never been a political party. It was formed as a parliament of the African people.
Right.
Right from the start up to now, the ANC is a coalition, if you want, of people of various political affiliations. Some will support free enterprise, others socialism. Some are conservatives, others are liberals. We are united solely by our determination to oppose racial oppression. That is the only thing that unites us. There is no question of ideology as far as the odyssey of the ANC is concerned, because any question approaching ideology would split the organization from top to bottom. Because we have no connection whatsoever, except at this one, of our determination to dismantle apartheid.
Wow.
And so that means, right, like once apartheid is finally kind of in the rearview mirror, and don't get me wrong, the reason that South Africa still has such horrible inequality is because it still has a significant minority of whites that are so far and away more wealthy than the black majority of the country. But the actual governmental structures of apartheid are gone. And so Mandela said this party was not meant to do anything else. Right? It was just meant to get rid of apartheid, which means it's good. I'm so interested to see like where do they go? They need to become something else now.
Yes.
Right?
They need to become, it's like saying the ANC being like a political party, after the way you described it with Mandela's quote there, it seems like you're trying to find the political ideology of the U.S. House of Representatives, right? What defines the U.S. House of Representatives? Well, they represent the United States, right?
Exactly.
That's what it does.
Yeah.
Just trying to define an ideology of that body is useless.
Totally.
And it seems like that's kind of their problem there.
Yeah.
Now, I want to call out a little bit more information about the far right parties. If you have anything else to say before we get into that, you tell me.
I was just going to go into what I've read about their potential ideas for creating coalitions.
Yeah.
So maybe you can hop in at some point here. So the second most seats that were won in this election were the Democratic Alliance. They are to the right of center. They're the free marketers. They're your neoliberals. And so business interests are very interested and highly supportive of the DA, the Democratic Alliance, getting a large part in the coalition that the ANC creates. But along with this, the DA is interested in scrapping some of the ANC's black empowerment measures because they say that they haven't worked that well, and that could become politically not popular.
Right. They say they're race blind.
Exactly.
Right? And there's other smaller parties that have risen up now that are also saying they're race blind, and they're new parties. One that I'm pointing out right now is Action SA, okay? This is made by the mayor of Johannesburg.
Okay.
And he is saying it's a non-racialized party, very pro-environment. That's like their big thing. But because they're race neutral, it alienates a lot of black voters.
Yes. And there's also there's a Marxist party. So
that's
talk about
the big
right,
one.
We've got a far left party, the IDP, which is voice crack, my goodness, which is very Marxist. They got the third most seats. I think they got 57 seats in the election.
Yeah.
And so what I've seen,
they got wait, which one are you talking about?
Is it not the IDP?
No, are you talking about the MK,
Oh, maybe I am.
I think you're talking about the MK, okay?
Oh, and is it? I think it's IFP. I'm looking at the Reuters article now.
IFP is the fifth most popular now.
Oh,
but
okay.
IFP, I don't think this gets complicated, guys.
Okay.
Because IFP isn't technically far left. It's more of a Zulu nationalist movement.
Okay. I took the wrong notes.
Okay.
Erase everything I said except for the DA, the Democratic Alliance.
Yes.
They are the center right, the neoliberal party. You're right. MK is the third most. They're a populist party. Okay. The economic freedom fighters are the Marxists.
This party is the most radical that has the most clout. They have 39 seats. They actually lost 5 seats in the last election.
Okay.
But it's because of the rise in the MK, which is populist left.
Okay.
So the EFF, they had a lot of political controversy, especially last year when the leader of the party was singing a song that translated in English as shoot the Boer, which means shoot the white, because the Boer is the white population of Africa, of South Africa. And so him coming out saying shoot the Boer really, in American media, was everywhere.
Okay.
Everywhere. Okay. I mean, that was all over Twitter. That was all over Fox News, even about how South Africa is being taken over by a bunch of racist black people.
Yeah.
The EFF models the economic freedom fighters. They model their theory of revolution and of politics off Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso. Thomas Sankara did a good thing in Burkina Faso and how he threw off the French colonizers back in the 80s. But he did not do what EFF is suggesting with shoot the Boer. EFF is also talking about nationalizing the coal companies. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a lot. So they are very hard right, Marxist, very hard left Marxist. Jesus.
Yes, absolutely. So what I've read is that the ANC wants to create what is called a confidence and supply agreement with the DA and the IDF. God, tell me I'm getting that right. or the IFP. I think maybe the DA and the IFP.
Yep. Okay,
is
that
what
makes
they
sense.
want a coalition with. And what they're hoping for is they'll agree that the DA and the IFP vote with them on important measures like budgets. Meanwhile, DA and IFP members get important positions in parliament, but the leader of the ANC continues to be the prime minister.
That makes sense. I mean, that's what you would expect from a coalition where the top party gets still 40% of the vote, right?
Yes.
So that makes sense. It's so interesting to me that there were so many new parties in this election.
Totally.
So many new parties. The fact that MK comes out of nowhere and becomes the third largest party after not being on the ballot before, right? That's a huge deal. There have been different splits in the Democratic Alliance where new political parties are coming up. And so it's just... It's interesting to see what happens to the ANC after this, because once they make the coalition with the center-right, they're going the way of the SPD in Germany.
Yeah.
And so once you go that way, you might lose any center-left base you once had.
Yeah.
And they might transition into more radical elements in the EFF or MK.
That makes sense. I'm interested to see whether this has any effect on crime.
Yeah.
On the economy. I'm not really confident it will, because these problems seem so deeply baked in to the establishments there. But that's what they need to solve.
Yeah, that's like problem number one. Everything else that we want to talk about, you can't develop an economy, you can't build infrastructure if corruption has rotted your state bureaucracy to its core.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm hopeful for them, but we'll see.